So the first proposition is Proposition 51, and this is on school bonds. A yes vote for this proposition means that the state could sell $9 billion of general obligation bonds for education facilities, $7 billion for K through 12 public schools, and $2 billion for community colleges. The pros for this proposition are kind of obvious. It would increase the quality of our kids' education by improving the schools. It would increase access to affordable community colleges. There hasn't been a state school bond passed in 10 years, so a lot of people are saying it's long overdue and we need to put money into our schools. Arguments against this proposition include we can't afford it, it puts California more in debt, about $500 million each year. The interest is paid by taxpayers. Also, another argument is local bonds may work better than state bonds. And another argument against it is that this money could go to the more affluent and wealthy school districts that don't necessarily need it, and it's not guaranteed to go to the schools that actually need it. Organizations and people for this proposition are the president of the state PTA, the Retired Teachers Association, and community colleges. People against this proposition are Governor Jerry Brown and California Taxpayers Action Network. Okay, the next proposition is Proposition 52, which is on money for MediCal. MediCal is just California's version of Medicaid, and it provides medical services for low-income residents of California. A yes vote on this proposition would just extend a current hospital fee that is being matched by the federal government and provides about $8 billion for low-income residents and their medical needs in California. Basically, there's an overwhelming support for this proposition. The only arguments against it are concerns that this money could just go to the CEO and there's no real allocation rules or laws, and they can just do whatever, the hospitals can do whatever they want with this money. As I said, there are a ton of supporters for this proposition. A few include the California Hospital Association, the California Association of Nurse Practitioners, and the California Senior Advocates League. And there is no group opposing it on record right now. So, the next proposition is Proposition 53, and this would require any public infrastructure project over $2 billion to be approved by California citizens by a vote. Arguments for this proposition are that huge state infrastructure projects that cost a lot of money are under no control of the citizens. Big projects like the LA to San Francisco bullet train was told it would cost $10 billion, but now it's looking more like $60 billion, and we have no control over whether we want that to go ahead or not. So basically the argument against it is that if we're paying for it, we should be in the decision-making process. Arguments against include that necessary infrastructure projects that need to get started and get done and built would be slowed down by putting another step in the process of it by needing voter approval. It also doesn't account for any emergency or natural disaster. If there was an earthquake or wildfire, which happens a lot in California, that destroys a lot of infrastructure, then we wouldn't be able to rebuild it immediately and get it back to where it was. Also, an argument against the proposition is that it takes away local control. If a city needs a big infrastructure project and everyone in the city agrees, like, we need to do this, we need to build this to better our city, to better our lives here in this town, then it might not necessarily be fair if the entire state votes on it when people don't live in that town and don't understand what that town needs. People for this proposition are the president of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, a farmer, and a retired sheriff. People against this proposition, the California Professional Firefighters, Association of California Water Agencies, and California Office of Emergency Services. Okay, the next proposition is Proposition 54, which would require bills to be published on the internet 72 hours or more before the vote of it. And it also would require the legislature to record videos of all of its proceedings except for closed session proceedings. The main arguments in favor of this proposition is more transparency and less power to special interest groups and big corporations. Arguments against this proposition are that it will slow down the voting and legislature process, because if there's one mistake in this published bill on the internet, then they have to do another 72 hours after they edit it, and that could slow down the process of passing bills that California needs. People against this proposition also argue that it will help special interest group because it will give them more time to attack and lobby for or against this bill with those 72 hours that they get with the rest of California citizens. People in favor of this proposition include the League of Women Voters in California, California Planning and Conservation League, and the California Chamber of Commerce. People against this proposition include Californians for an Effective Legislature. Next is Proposition 55. A yes vote on Proposition 55 would extend and continue an existing income tax for high-income earners. This tax extension would fund education and healthcare. Arguments for this proposition are that California still needs more funding for education and healthcare, as always, and this is the best way to get that funding. Nobody's taxes will be raised. It's just continuing current tax rates that were proposed in 2012. It will take a small portion of money away from the wealthiest Californians and put it into education and healthcare where it is needed. Arguments against this proposition are that this tax extension proposed in 2012 was supposed to be temporary. It was proposed as temporary, and people say it should stay temporary and it should not be extended by another 12 years. People that support this proposition are California State PTA, the Children's Defense Fund, and the Superintendent of Public Instruction. People that propose this proposition are Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, the National Federation of Independent Businesses of California, and the retired Superior Court Judge. Alright, this next proposition is Proposition 56, and this proposes a additional $2 per pack tax on cigarettes and a potential $3.37 tax on e-cigarettes. Arguments in favor of this proposition include this higher tax will deter more people from smoking, especially teenagers, and the money gained from this tax will go directly to MediCal services, and 13% will go to tobacco prevention programs. People for this proposition also argue that if you don't use tobacco, you don't pay. Arguments against this are a tax on e-cigarettes could be harmful to people quitting cigarettes because e-cigarettes don't have any tobacco in it and they will be still taxed as other tobacco products, and they're often used to help people quit smoking as they have less harmful health effects to your body, and so a tax on e-cigarettes would deter people from using them and quitting smoking. Another argument is that it may cheat schools out of $600 million a year by diverting some of this tax money away from schools and to health insurance companies. People for this proposition are the past chair of the board, American Cancer Society, California Division, a board member of the American Lung Association in California, and the president of the American Heart Association. People against this proposition are the former executive director of California State Board of Education, former director, Maternal Health and Family Planning, Los Angeles County Department of Health, and the president, Association of Orange County Deputy Sheriffs. Next is Proposition 57, which will make it easier for nonviolent offenders in prison to get parole. And it also will require a judge to confirm a county prosecutor's decision to put a juvenile in an adult court. So arguments for this proposition include save California taxpayer dollars by decreasing the population in prisons, and it will allow non-violent offenders to rehabilitate and to become better citizens and to get out of prisons and into parole. It also incentivizes good behavior, rehabilitation, and education advancements for these non-violent offenders. The biggest argument against this proposition is that right now California does not have a very definitive or specific definition for non-violent offenders. And people against this proposition are worried that rapists and pedophiles and gang-related gun crimes may fall under nonviolent crimes when most people would consider these crimes violent. People for this proposition are Governor Jerry Brown, the President of Chief Probation Officers of California. People against this proposition are the President of the San Francisco Police Officers Association, the President of the Association of Los Angeles Deputy Sheriffs, and the President of the California District Attorneys Association.